heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
What's your name?
Lane.
Full name?
Lane L. Lane.
Is that 3 L's?
No, just one. It's L-A-I-N-E-L-L-A-I-N-E.
That is 3 L's.
Yeah, but not together.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Lane?
I'm a shepherd.
Why are you doing this, Mr. Lane?
I like podcasters. I like to hear their declarative statements on movies. I like you.
For a gentleman holding the microphone, sure sounds like we're about to talk Fletch on the Pod of Dreams.
Oh, for God, Don.
What is this man saying? What is this man doing?
What in the hell's the matter with you?
What is this man's name?
My name is Igor Stravinsky.
Hi there, I'm Harry S. Truman.
I'm Don Corleone.
They call him Fletch.
Fletch, F. Fletch.
He's good at defending himself,
Better tie your shoelaces.
disguising himself, and getting himself into trouble.
Well, it be Fletch. Go ahead. Make my day.
He's a reporter
There are no tags on these mattresses.
who's about to write the story of a lifetime,
Will you kill me? Sure.
if he lives.
Thanks a lot.
There isn't a woman he can't charm,
Can I borrow your towel for a sec? My car just hit a water buffalo.
a question he won't ask,
You and your wife are currently alive, I take it?
Drop your shorts and bend over, Mr. Babar.
a risk he won't take,
Probably feel 100% Moon River.
to get to the truth.
It looks like you two have a lot to talk over. We'll just catch the last 10 minutes of Dynasty.
Universal Pictures presents Chevy Chase as Fletch.
My hero.
Welcome to it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pod of Dreams. I am Ben. I'm here with Eric, as per usual, but we also have a very, very special guest, Damon Fudge, who's got a couple of fun jobs. One of them is doing movie reviews for KCCI.com, and he also is it news director? What's the official?
Yeah, newscast director
Newscast director.
Yeah.
So he's the guy that's telling when to cut and when to go to the stories and doing all that really fun stuff. And hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit. But Damon, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself a little bit? Give us some of your background here.
Hello. Yeah, no, hi, I'm Damon Fudge. Yeah, I've been in television news for going on 25 years now. I started at WHO back in '97, and then transferred over to Channel 8. I've been doing the various positions over there. I've been camera operator, prompter operator, graphics operator, and then finally got to be trained as a newscast director about 10 years ago. And I've been doing that ever since. I started on the morning shifts, which is a really tough shift. When you wake up every morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're like, why am I up? Yeah. And the morning shift is a rough shift, but now thankfully for the last about 6-7 years I've been on nights, so that's good. And that basically entails I'm the guy that tells everybody what to do, which is nice. I like doing that. And you tell. I basically there's a job called producer. They're ones that put all the stories together in order and put together the scripts, and then I have to basically interpret everything that they have in a script so that the other positions understand it. The technical director, this is the person that punches the buttons, that puts everything on the air. The audio operator, self-explanatory, and the camera operators too. So everybody knows hopefully what they're doing during a show, and I'm the one that calls all that action during a broadcast.
And it's totally live. Everything's happening.
Of course, the video's recorded.
Sure.
But no, it's totally everything's totally live. It's you make a mistake, you move on. It's a harrowing job at times. Especially when you've got major breaking news, like all the bad weather we've had over the last few weeks here. But it's a lot of fun in a lot of ways. some ways it's stressful, but that's, part of being a live broadcast. So
what is the training process for a newscast director like? You said about a decade ago you started training. What does it entail? You go with somebody who's been doing it and they just tell you why they're making the decisions and what all you need to know. What is that like?
Yeah, basically, you have to you sit down, and one of the first steps you do is you go through the script and say, this is everything that you're looking for, and this is what this note means, this is what this particular thing means, and this is how you notate it in a rundown, and then you gradually put the person. They usually you sit with them for a little bit. Watch what they're doing, listen to how they're talking, because there's very, very specific way you speak and the very specific way you give commands. And then you gradually introduce them, that you put them in the seat for something real easy, like recording a 10-second tease or something like that. And then you graduate them to, say, a live update, like what we do. We do a 30-second one around 4 o'clock every day. So you graduate them slowly into the process, let them do like the sports block on a show, and then let them do the block before that for a show, and then finally get them to the first block, which is the main news block, and that's really the heady block. That's where the big content comes in, and and a lot of the changes and a lot of the details, and it's a lot. That first block is the most difficult of a show. So yeah, I've been the one that's been kind of in charge of training everybody for quite a while too. So
okay, yeah. So you got both sides of it. I got to confess, about everything I know about broadcasting the news is from the movie Broadcast News. And I don't know, is that how accurate? I mean, it's different levels of scale, obviously, but how close is that? If somebody's thinking, hey, did James Brooks get broadcast news right? How close is it?
No, it's actually it's very accurate. I love watching that movie today, because I think to myself, how the hell did they get a newscast on using typewriters?
Oh, sure.
It's like
no computers.
Yeah. No. And it just boggles my mind that they could actually, do a newscast without modern technology. But there were much more simplistic broadcasts too, of course. But yeah, no, he got it very very accurate. Even the great scene with Joan Cusack running through the building to try to get the video too. We don't have, our building isn't that big, and we don't have that far to go. If went back when we had tape, it wasn't that far to run. I mean, you still had a little bit of a distance between the newsroom and the engineering department where they would put the tapes, where they would play the tapes from. But it wasn't that like long distance thing. But
it was, we need this tape, go, and somebody's walking at least.
Yeah, you can have a story where the because of circumstances out in the field, the reporter didn't get back. And they're cutting it the last second, and they really need to really get it into into engineering to play it back. But those were kind of rare instances back in the tape days. Now everything's all digital.
Right.
It still takes a little bit of time, but it's kind of an instant upload. So yeah, you definitely avoid those things. But yeah, like I said, it's very, very accurate. I remember watching years ago, ESPN did a night where they showed the behind the scenes. They broadcast Sports Center on, I think, ESPN2, and on ESPN they had like a Zoom meeting kind of to a bunch of boxes showing you all the different little areas of things going on. And they did literally have an editor. It was exactly like the scene. There was an editor that finished the tape, and they handed it off to a guy, and that guy started running, and he had to go up some stairs and go down another hallway, and they had one of their reporters and a cameraman following him the whole way. And halfway through the trip, the reporter actually face planted.
Oh my.
And he just kind of rolled over and just told the camera, he was like, wait, motioned the camera guy, no, keep going, follow him, I'm okay. And so yeah, you've got a big corporation type, like national news and everything. They've got probably different floors and different levels. Like I said,
sure. Okay.
Everything digital now. It's just punch a button and Actually, yeah, because I think if I remember correctly, from the last time I edited, I think it's like the F4 key is what you use to get it to upload it into our system. So yeah, that's TV news there in a nutshell. It's a lot of fun. It gets in your blood. It does. It definitely gets in your blood.
I'd imagine when you see the red light go on, that when it goes live, there's got to be some sort of adrenaline pumping when you
a little bit, especially if I had a situation just last week where it was taking a longer time than normal to get everything for me to fill out the rundown and get my notes all settled and everything, and I didn't get into the newsroom or into the control room until about 7 minutes before showtime, which is very late. You know, you want to be in there between a half hour and 20 minutes, so you've got the time to sit down and look at things and answer people's questions, because audio may have a question about something, or the technical director almost always has a question about some sort of a graphic or something else. So you want to have that prep time, and I didn't have the prep time, so I was kind of really kind of going into the show a little blinder than normal. So it was a little bit of a tense first block where everything. I was just kind of like, hey, we need to get moving here, guys, and then we had some people that were out of place, and it's just like, come on, let's get this. Yeah, so it was kind of a stressful show.
This was just a week ago. Okay.
Yeah, about a week ago. Yeah. So it was. Yeah. It was. You get those, and yeah, that's where the heart starts racing, and you risk blurting out cuss words.
Sure. Oh yeah, that's tough. Yeah, because you're like, oh, this is all live. Everything's going to go out. They can't edit anything.
Yeah.
It's not a recorded podcast. This whole time you've been in business for 25 years. You've been writing movie reviews for pretty much that whole time.
No, I've been doing reviews since about I want to say like 2006 or 7. So I started. It was actually one of our morning anchors noticed that the Register was having a contest. This was around the time that the TV stations and the Register and newspapers and such were really realizing that the web was where they needed to be, and they needed to really up their presence on their websites. And the Register wanted like these 10 what they called community movie critics, because they were changing up their website. And so they held a contest, and I was one of the 10 picked, and I started writing movie reviews just basically for their website. And occasionally, if they needed content in the Today section for like Monday morning, every once in a while they would actually print some of our reviews, which was kind of cool. And then a few years into that, they changed their website again to be a subscription-only website, and I hadn't written anything for a while, and somebody actually messaged me on the site, and when I went to go respond, it was like, oh, you need to pay $10 to do that, and I'm like, I'm not paying for the privilege of writing reviews for you. So then I then started a separate Facebook page for just doing that. And then it was probably about a month and a half after I started that. It was real kismet going. It's all basically movie. I was sitting on the news set reading a book about movies and waiting for John Pascuzzi to show up, who was the old on-air movie reviewer for Channel 8 for the longest time. He was supposed to come in and record his review and for that week. And the news director at the time, Dave Busick, came into the studio to talk to the weather person who was engaged in another conversation. So he just started talking with me, asked how the movie reviewing thing was going, and I went, well, it's this. And I told him the whole story, and he goes, well, let me talk to our web guys and see what they think about you doing them for our website. And I was like, well, I'm friends with the two that were running it at the time. I was friends with them. I'm like, there's a no-brainer, and that's how I started doing it for our website.
Oh man, that is kismet.
I was just gonna say, and then so how did that transition to like Rotten Tomatoes and kind of expanding that beyond the website?
Yeah, so it was actually one of my best friends told me that I needed to see. He was like he was poking me and going, hey, you need to look into seeing if you can get your stuff on Rotten Tomatoes. And I was like, okay, well, I'll look into that. And I looked into it, and they only accept applications in, I think it's March and September, I think is the months. And the day that I checked, I believe it was like October 1st or 2nd.
Oh.
So I had another 6 months before, of my friend kept going. Even though I would explain to him, like, I can't do it until March, he would keep like once every couple of weeks he would poke me and be like,
hey, you applied Rotten Tomatoes yet? Come on, man, do it.
Don't forget about Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, what are you doing? Don't forget about Rotten Tomatoes. And so then the following March, I applied and got accepted, because it's like you have to have been writing for so many years for an accredited website. It can't just be like your blog or whatever like that. So and it was like, and I was. I heard back in like a couple days. It was pretty quick. And they were like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And I just went through the process of signing up, and now I get to affect the tomato meter and link my reviews from KCCI onto their website. So, I feel so powerful now.
Should I always ask, are you ever tempted to, like, hey, I can just totally tank this beloved movie and people are going to read my review and hate it, but I'm going to get so much traffic. Oh, it'll drive up those numbers so much. Yeah,
no, because I think it's because I just love movies so much that I don't. And despite being a part of it, not only Rotten Tomatoes, but being a part of the critics community, I've never really been a huge fan of aggregator sites like that because of kind of the way it has ended up influencing the industry as a whole. But I don't mind the exposure. I'm fine with getting people to read my stuff. But I'm also one of the first people, as I say, like being a part of the critic community, I'm always one of the first people to say, yeah, we're full of shit. So, it's because it's all opinion. And,
right.
Especially my reviews, if you go and you look through my list, you'll see that it's mostly fresh reviews, partly because I don't get reimbursed from the station. I've always just paid for my own tickets. So I'm usually going to something that I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy.
If you're going to pick movies to see, you're not going to pick movies you're going to hate. Yeah. Who's going to do that? Right.
I mean, if it was a reimbursement thing and I could just go to anything and that was all I did for my job, then yeah, I would go see everything. You'd probably have more negative reviews, which is what makes some of the negative reviews always that much more fun and surprising for me, because it's just like, oh wow, I did not expect that movie to be that bad. And it's a lot of fun to rip on a movie when it is bad.
I'm seeing Morbius. I'm just kind of looking through. That was one of the few I see that you gave a poor rating to. That seems to be the consensus.
That is the consensus. Yeah, it was. As friends of mine, I have a group of friends that we get together once a month. We call ourselves the Die of Doom Film Society, and we watch bad movies.
Oh, sure.
And it's the whole process of we have a box and we put the posters of the movies. There's 6 of us, so there's 6 movies to choose from, and one person rolls the box, which is the Die of Doom. And we have 3 rules. You have to sit through the whole thing. There's no pausing and no rewinding. And there's a lot of times when we get out of watching one of those and we're like, that was a movie. Yeah, and that's about what I could say for a film like Morbius. It's a movie.
I haven't heard a single vaguely complimentary thing about the movie. And it's probably out there. I'm sure it's not a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, but boy, it's hard to find stuff. But so your Die of Doom. Sorry, I'm just going to ask, how do you decide what movies go in or are selected from the possible options to roll?
We all select a movie. most times because we can get through 3 movies a meeting, and so if we haven't done a die cleanse, as we call it, where we just go ahead and don't pick 3 more new movies to add to it, we just go with the other 3 and try and clear it off. Then the 3 people whose movies were chosen, they get to choose 3 more movies, and we call them movies of. I like to refer to them as movies of questionable quality because we thoroughly enjoy a lot of the movies that we watch. That was when you sent me the email about this, I was like, you said, it could be good, it could be bad. And when I said I was debating between a bunch of movies, I was like, one of those was I was like, maybe I should really throw them a curveball and choose one of our favorite Die of Doom movies, and do one of those or
Sure.
Something like that. I'm constantly looking through, and I follow a few review websites that specialize in cult cinema things and looking for things that sound like, oh yeah, that's probably going to be very die worthy, and I'll pick something up and watch it and be like, okay, yeah, and I'll take that with me. And
I gotta say that Die of Doom sounds like a heck of a podcast. You shake it, you pick the movie.
That's true.
We've kind of talked about that, yeah. But it's a lot of fun. Like there's sometimes you get a movie and we suffer. We really I'll say that was one of my picks quite a while back. Is a movie called Veronica, which was the directorial debut of Glenn Danzig.
Oh,
yes. And
he directed a movie, huh? Okay.
Actually, I believe he's directed a second film in the interim, or since then. And but yeah, no, it's a movie. Yeah, it's definitely.
Didn't he direct the Mother video? I think he did, if I remember right.
He might have, yeah. But and but this was like based on some comic book that he'd written years ago, and it's just filled with shots that just go on forever and ever, and so much gratuitous nudity that you actually get numbed to it, which is you just don't think you could, but hey, look, there's more boobs. Great. And now they're covered in blood, and we're lingering. And no, Glenn, you can cut anytime. Glenn, you need an editor.
We got it. We understand. The audience understands what's happening.
Yes.
We figured it out.
Yeah.
Move on to the next thing.
Exactly. So it's movies like that where we're like, oh geez. But then you get movies like I'll throw out a good couple titles here. American Shaw is a fantastically bad movie, starring now I'm blanking on his name, but big gymnast back in the 80s, that one's fantastic. It co-stars Donald Pleasance as a televangelist, and it involves Chinese mysticism.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's another great one that we love called The Kindred, or no, not The Kindred. This happens to me all the time. Uninvited. The Uninvited is what it's called.
Okay.
And it stars Academy Award winner George Kennedy, and it's about a bunch of people on a yacht. And they are being attacked by a cat that was genetically experimented on that escapes from the lab at the beginning of the movie, and they end up bringing the cat. They find the cat as a stray, and they bring it along with them. Well, this cat, there's no other way to say it. It has another cat inside of it that comes out of its mouth and attacks people, and then goes right back in.
Makes perfect sense.
Like the alien mouth, but it's a cat.
Kind of, but I mean, like the full cat comes out and attacks people, and then crawls back in.
It detaches. It goes out.
It goes out and like leaves the husk of a cat, and then goes back into the and then goes back into the other cat. And it's just a movie that needs to be seen to be believed, but it is fantastic.
Someday we'll do one of these so bad it's good movies. I mean, I subjected Eric to The Room a few years ago, and it was dire at first because there's a lot of those gratuitous sex scenes. Like, I think there's like 3 of them, and Eric was having a hard time getting past them. But once you got past it, then you got to the really good stuff. And it's unfortunate because bad movies are ones you really do want to watch with other people. I mean, there's plenty of movies I love watching by myself and I don't need anybody else around. That's fine. But like a bad movie, that's one you want somebody else to experience with. I don't want to sit down and watch one by myself usually.
Yeah.
But then, and I have a YouTube show, Best of the Worst, done by Red Letter Media, and they do a version of that where they're watching bad movies and they have their gimmicks. They're spinning wheels and all sorts of other ways of selecting which bad movies they're going to watch.
A couple of our Diet Doom guys are huge Red Letter Media fans. And we also have there's a book called The Bad Movie Bible. And I'd picked up a copy for myself and was like, okay, everybody needs a copy. So I think it was for Christmas one year, I gave everybody else a copy of the book. And it is, and we do just call it the Bible. We know what we're talking about when we say, hey, was this in the Bible? And in fact, it's gone to the point where the past 3 years, one of our friends he's like the one that's really big sports guy. And so a couple years ago, he decided that we should, during March Madness, do a Diet of Doom Madness. And he took all of the movies that we'd watched over the last year and put them in a bracket. And we all had to put together our own brackets. And that first year that he did it, he had a surprise for us. He had actually contacted the author of the Bad Movie Bible and got him to do his own bracket. And so that was what instead of watching the games on TV to find out who wins, that was our official of who wins each fight between the two, between each movie.
Awesome.
And that was just super cool. And we've done it a couple more years since. So, and he's just been that author has been just more than willing to fill out his own bracket every year.
That's really cool.
Yeah, no, he's cool.
So I'm going to transition. We're not watching a bad movie today. Today we watched Fletch. And we always have our guests pick the movie. So, Damon, why of all the movies that you could have possibly picked in the universe did you pick Fletch?
Well, Fletch has always been one of my top films. It is an absolutely hilarious comedy. It's also a very good mystery. It's kind of one of the last, I would say, of that genre that kind of went from like the mid 70s through about the mid 80s. Where they would do these really good comedies, and of course, and Chevy was part of another really good one back in the 70s called Foul Play. No, it's one of the reasons I picked it is because I've discovered over the last few years, people know Chevy Chase, and they know some of his output. Of course, a lot of people know him from Community recently, and of course, they know Christmas Vacation because everybody watches that every year. They'll probably know Three Amigos, probably Caddyshack, probably The First Vacation. But Fletch, which Chevy has called his favorite movie that he's ever made, because it was the first one where he was really allowed to just kind of be himself, is kind of gotten largely forgotten out of his oeuvre, so to speak. And so I've actually been personally trying to put the word out among people. I work with a lot of the part-timers at the station are college kids or kids right out of college, and so I've been like, you find it's like basically anybody that was probably born mid 90s to late 90s ish on don't really know about this movie, and I find that to be just a travesty because the movie is so damn good and so funny. And it is a movie that is just universally quotable. I think I remember some of my friends and I we figured out at one point that the movies that we quoted the most were Ghostbusters and Fletch. And it is. It's just full of great one-liners, and that you can like. I've been known to throw out lines from this movie just haphazardly, not even thinking. Someone will ask a question, and I'll throw out a line from Fletch as a response. And it's for me, it's either Fletch or the Val Kilmer movie Real Genius. My brain will I'll just say something without even thinking, and then I'll realize, oh yeah, then this is probably not the right company to have said that in. They probably didn't get that at all. So, but yeah, no, Fletch is just such a good movie, and it does kind of depress me a little bit that it seems to have been forgotten. But hopefully that will be changed, not just by this podcast, but I think, I don't know when it's slated to come out, maybe later this year or early next year, but they have finally, after years and years and years of trying, they have finally gotten a reboot done, and they filmed it earlier this year. They're basing it off because it's actually a series of books, and the sequel Fletch Lives that they did back in the 80s isn't one of the books because the way they end the movie is different than the book, and so they couldn't really do any of the other book stories. But they're taking the second book and going from there, and John Hamm is stepping into the role of Fletch this time around. So I'm very cautiously optimistic about that, because I think John Hamm's a great comedian and or comedic actor, and
he hasn't really landed on much. He's tried comedy, but since Mad Men, there really hasn't been a thing. He was in that Tag movie, right? I didn't think that movie worked.
Yeah,
that well.
He was in, and then he did that. Was it Keeping Up with the Joneses?
Okay.
With Galifianakis.
Yeah.
But when he does comedy, though, he hits it, like when he guest starred on 30 Rock and
Curb. He was good in Curb.
Yeah, good in Curb and his appearances on SNL and things like that. No, he knows he's a very funny actor. And so I'm like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I really hope that they pull it off. So yeah, Confess Fletch is coming out at some point here. So I'm hoping that it does create it into a new franchise, because it's like I said, they've tried a few times. Kevin Smith was the closest about in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. He wanted Jason Lee to star in it, and he was going to do the last two books that the author wrote in that series. Were actually prequels, and so he wanted to do the first one of that, with Jason Lee being a young Fletch when he was just first starting out as a reporter. So,
do you know, are the books funny? Are they comical?
They are in a little bit of a sense, but they are more, they're mysteries. They're more mysteries. But he is still kind of kind of flippant in the books, but they're not like the movie. Because the movie. Director Michael Ritchie, who did Bad News Bears, he would do a take by the script, and then he would just look at Chevy and go, "Okay, now do what you want to do." And that's one of the reasons Chevy loved the movie, is because of the fact that Michael Ritchie just was like so open to letting Chevy just riff.
And you can feel that there's like a whole serious movie, and then there's Chevy Chase, so you can kind of feel that sort of dichotomy there.
Yeah, and so that so it is, and the book. Because I've read all of the books, but the original book. There's a few elements that they kept out, like there's this Fletch, because during the movie, if you have to give a plot, one of the things that he's first doing when we meet him is he's investigating the drug trade on the beach. And in the book, he actually has taken an apartment nearby there, so it doesn't look strange that he gets up and leaves and goes a huge distance away every night. And he's got there's a teenage junkie girl that's living with him in that apartment. And her character, not spoiling anything for anybody who wants to read the book, but her character ends up dying at some point in the book from an overdose. The two threads of the between the drug trade on the beach and the guy who, Alan Stanwyck, the character that hires him to kill him, hires Fletch to kill him, there's no connection in the book. The police chief still ends up killing Stanwyck, but just because he thinks that he's Fletch, mistakes him for Fletch from outside the house.
From a writing standpoint, because so everything you described about this being forgotten in Chevy Chase oeuvre, that absolutely would apply to me. I was born in '84, and I don't think I'd ever sat down and watched this entire movie. And what's more, not only did I forget about it, I kind of actively don't like Chevy Chase. Yeah. Christmas Vacation has kind of grown on me a little bit over the years, but the vacation movies have never worked for me, and I've never really able to buy Chevy Chase as like a nice guy, as an everyman. He feels more natural when he's being a little bit of a jerk. That kind of feels like his home. Mm-hmm. And so I came into this movie thinking, ooh, Chevy Chase, smart alecky comic from the 80s. That's going to be pretty rough. And boy, this is why we should have guests on all the time. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I actually laughed throughout this movie and how much it felt like an actual movie, not just a comedy. Yeah. But there is a plot and a narrative going on the whole time. And as smart as he's going to be, what he's saying kind of makes sense, and people kind of react to him in a way that's plausible and sometimes out and out believable. Sometimes in comedies, people will say wacky things and nobody reacts like actual people. And it's just, okay, people are saying silly things, but it feels unreal. This didn't have that at all. I mean, you could tell with those two narrative strands, this guy's going to kill and the drug trades. I assumed those were going to link by the end, but it works really well. The writing surprised me by how good it was, and I should probably maybe give these books a try, because I was pleasantly surprised by how well it worked, and it maintained the plot throughout, and a lot of the humor was derived from the plot in a way that worked surprisingly well. Yeah, I was genuinely shocked to have laughed out loud, because I only really remember two scenes that I've ever seen. One is the prostate exam scene. I remember that. And then the hallucinatory scene when he thinks, he's imagining himself as a Laker. And I think I saw it as a kid, and I thought it was going to be a basketball movie. And then I was disappointed when it was adults talking. I mean, we're talking when I was probably like 5 or something. It's like I didn't get any of the humor at all. And it's just like, no, I thought it was basketball was going to happen. And it's not. It's just a weird little fantasy sequence where he imagines being a star Laker for whatever reason. So I was pleasantly surprised by how well this worked. And like, why are we talking about these other Chevy Chase movies and not this one is a great question. Yeah. I don't have an answer to that one because it made money. This was a hit. I looked, it was like, it was a big little budget of $8 million and it made 58. Like that's a hit. Yeah, no, it was a solid 80s hit. And I unfortunately didn't get to see it when it was in theaters, but I did see it a year later, like on HBO or whatever. That's when I became a big fan of it. But yeah, no, you're right. People do react naturally to his sarcasm and his wit, and like especially like when Stanwyck, the great Tim Matheson, brings him to his house at the beginning of the movie, and he's making a joke about Chevy's making a joke about how he came real close to buying that place until he found out that Hopalong Cassidy killed himself there. So he was like, bow and arrow, strange. And Tim says, "Are you high right now?" And he goes, "Don't talk to me like that, ass face. I don't work for you yet." People do actually react to his humor as a normal human being would. And, so yeah, that's part of what does make it, a much better comedy mystery film than just being like what we've gotten since is, you get it's either a comedy or it's an action film. You don't get, or a mystery, you don't really get the same kind of a combination like you do with Fletch or you did with Beverly Hills Cop. It's okay, we're going to make an action-y film, but it's going to star this comedian and it's just going to be a comedy with some elements in it. And that's, I think that's kind of where writing has kind of taken a downhill slide too when it comes to these types of movies is that you got to, if you're going to do a genre mashup, you do a genre mashup, you got to do
you got to approach the writing as I'm writing, this kind of movie, but we're going to throw comedy into it, and it's, you got to have an equal dosage rather than, like Paul Blart,
I've never had the pleasure of watching Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Neither have I. I've seen enough of of it. Kevin James, not one of my go-tos.
Sure. And this is, Eric, I don't know, maybe this is a good point that Damon made. Like, there aren't too many of these kind of mashups anymore. Action comedies, action mysteries. Eric, can you remember the last time one of these kind of came out where it was really just blending the two? Because it really does feel like there's those two kinds of movies mixed together.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. So you mentioned Beverly Hills Cop,
right?
And I think that because that comes out before Fletch, right?
Yeah.
And I think that movie, just for my perspective, does what Fletch is doing a little better, I think. And I think it kind of obscures maybe. And Eddie Murphy is so much more likable. I'm coming from the same place Ben is, where I have just never really liked Chevy Chase. He's just never done it for me. Caddyshack, everything he's in, I'm always thinking someone else could do it better than him. And he comes off as a jerk. He's like the same age as my dad and kind of looks like my dad, so maybe I need to talk to a therapist to figure out why that is. But I've just always kind of had an issue with him. And seeing in this movie too. Like it's, I kept thinking, is there a better version of this? And then my mind went to Ace Ventura for whatever reason, because Ace Ventura is a little bit like this, where there's this mystery. Yes, it's a stupid thing about a missing dolphin, so it's not like a real story. But then you throw this like crazy guy on top of it, who everyone else around him is like a normal person, except he's just this insane lunatic. And I kind of felt the same way with Fletch, where it's like everyone else is just living their lives, they're normal people, and then this guy that just like says the weirdest, most outlandish things to people. So yeah, I guess you're right. There aren't a ton of those comedy action movies. I think Seth Rogen's been in some sort of, like Pineapple Express is a little bit like that.
It came pretty close.
But like Ace Ventura, that's an interesting, to me, that's a straight out comedy. The mystery elements are just so, we just need to create more weird scenarios for Jim Carrey to do weird things. Yeah. It never works as an actual mystery to me. It's all just, what insane things are we going to hear Jim Carrey say?
I think one of the last that I remember is So I Married an Axe Murderer with Mike Myers, because that one's pretty well blended of his comedy bits, but there's also this background story. Still not as strong as either Fletch or Beverly Hills Cop, and I do agree, because Beverly Hills Cop, for a long time, Beverly Hills Cop was my favorite movie of all time. But yeah, the blending is what makes them so good. And yeah, so I think So I Married an Axe Murderer it still does lean a little bit more onto Mike Myers' shtick, but still keeps the story going.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's some really dark scenes in Fletch, which kind of threw me off. It's like the scene where
they take them seriously, right? I mean, don't you feel like they're not playing all of them for comedy?
Right, when they take him into the jail cell and the guy's like threatening to kill him, I'm like, holy crap, this is like getting seriously dark. Like police brutality and threatening his life.
Well,
like,
and you see Fletch realize, I can't just say something like, this is actually I'm in jeopardy here, and his facade changes, and then he switches gears in a way that it's kind of played for comedy, but it's also, you see a man realize he might get shot in the face. And that's a tricky balance to do, but I think they pull it off for me. I mean, maybe somebody could have done it better than Chevy Chase, but this is where I feel like Chevy Chase's obnoxious stick works a little better. I mean, he's playing kind of a jerk, a little bit, but I think he's only jerks to almost all just like rich doofuses. He's hardly bad to anybody who's not. I mean, these are just entitled rich people mostly that he's messing with. Yeah,
because everybody in the newsroom loves him. He comes walking in, and everybody's like, "Hey, Fletch is back!" And of course his friendship with Larry, very pre-stardom Gina Davis, but I think when it comes to the handling the dark with the comedy, well, I think that's one of the reasons why Michael Ritchie was such a good choice, because I mean, Bad News Bears, while a funny movie, it's got a lot of darkness to it too. I mean,
the guy's an alcoholic. I mean,
to start off with Walter Matthau as literally an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And then, you've got, Tanner that beats up the bullies when they're picking on Lupus, and that's a pretty dark scene there, and there's just and there's it's and just the pure fact of how the movie ends, so I think Michael Ritchie was a perfect choice to blend the darker serious elements of a mystery novel with Chevy's comedy sense. And I do agree. Chevy Chase. I actually had this conversation with a couple of the kids at work yesterday. That I've got the ability to separate art from artist. So if I didn't, there's no way I could still enjoy say the Lethal Weapon series. Sure. But Chevy was one of those very first people, probably one of the first people that you did have to do that with. You had to kind of separate art from artist, because even without the internet, you heard all of these stories about what a dick he was. He was, sure. The way he just left SNL in the lurch, and it was a reputation that followed him for a long time, and it still hounds him follows him to this date. I mean, you watch any kind of an interview with him. Even one of the guys was saying that he was just recently interviewed for CBS This Morning, and they were like, yeah, you can just tell he's just a jerk, and so yeah, I mean I would never want to probably personally meet him, but sure. I still do enjoy several of his movie performances.
There are 4 jokes in this movie that I burst out laughing. And I was thinking about when was the last time I burst out laughing? So I had never seen this before either. So this was the first time watch. Again, same thing for Ben. It just sort of slipped in there around his other movies, and it was never on TV, and I'd never seen it before. But the rubber glove joke, the do you own rubber gloves? I rent them. I have a lease option. Yeah, that to me is so stupid, but I just sat and laughed for 2 minutes. And then the Babar scene. Yeah. How do you is it with 2 B's? No, 1. B-A-B-R. That's 2 B's. Oh, but they weren't next to each other.
That's what you meant. Yeah.
And the elephant stuff, because I remember Babar as a kid being around. I was like, oh wait, is that a reference to the elephant? Because I do love the made up names he has all the time. I mean, he does The Godfather and a bunch of other just made up nonsense, and all the stupid other names for penises all the time in his names.
And you have to really listen, because he just throws. That is, I guess, one skill Chevy Chase has that not a lot of comedians do, where you just throw in these quick lines, and you're like, wait, I didn't catch that. But if you listen careful enough, they're pretty hilarious. The other thing, for whatever reason, when he has the champagne when he's at the club, and he pops the bottle and he pours it in the bucket. I don't know why that made me laugh. It's like, why did he do that?
Just little bits of business that he's really good with. And the whole, his classic looking at the wrist with no watch and going.
Yes, yeah, that's it's so dumb, but oh man, I cracked up.
Yeah, and like I said, I constantly, will throw out quotes from this movie. There was one time I was talking with one person at I think it was when I was still at 13. I was talking with one of the reporters, and one of my really good friends. She was sitting right next to us, and he was just kind of asking it was one of those, how you kind of get into conversations about where, your family name, where did that come from and everything. And he's just like, what is the nationality of Fudge? And I went, Scotch Romanian, just right out of my mouth. And which of course is a line when the John Cocktails, that's an interesting name. My best friend who was sitting there, she of course is a big Fletch fan as well, and she just started laughing and gave me a high five. And I think if I remember correctly, I think he said that's an odd combination, and I believe I did continue with the line, "You should meet my parents."
Sure.
So yeah, no, it's just so wonderfully quotable, and
And those are probably ad libs, right? Like you said.
Oh yeah.
There's probably a script, but that seems like something he just probably came up on the spot.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and just kudos to all of the actors in this movie for being able to keep straight faces. I'm sure there were a lot of messed up takes, but
I'm sure he plays the bearded guru guy on the street. I'm sure that if I were on set, this is ridiculous. Why he's skateboarding and then it's just outlandish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just seeing it made me like, oh, that's so grotesque that it made me laugh as well. So yeah, it would have been really tough to not laugh. It's probably a lot of takes.
Yeah, and I even like just within the last month, one of the technical directors at work had said something, and I didn't quite hear them, and I said what, and they pointed to the screen to try and show me something, but the screen, just I don't know if you've ever seen like behind the scenes of a news control room, but we have like 5 giant TV screens that are all divided into tiny little monitors, and so I don't know where she was pointing. And sure. So I did Frank's line. I said, "Don't point, speak." Like I said, this stuff just kind of falls out of the mouth.
Sure. Well, my favorite one, the one that I'm more likely to use in just some scenario, I don't know when, it's gonna stay in the back of my head, was just when he's being confronted by the police chief, and he's like, "I like getting manhandled and thrown around. I like you." It was just such a like obnoxious thing to say to a cop who's like being super masculine and tough, and then saying that you like that and that you're really into that. I mean, there's just such a really obnoxious way to mess with them.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was the point where I laughed the most. I had to pause the movie and just revel in the laughter for a little bit. I didn't expect that line to come. The thing is, you just don't expect it. You don't know what the humor is going to be. It's not always obvious, and then it just comes from somewhere in his brain, and then you're just like, oh, that's really, really funny.
That was the thing for me. It took a while for there to be a joke in the movie. Like, honestly, it was 20-30 minutes into the movie where he makes his first joke. I'm like, whoa, okay, now we're cooking with jokes. But for most of the first quarter of the movie, there's nothing funny about it.
Well, that worked for me. That helped put stuff in con. I mean, they just really did get the balance right. I mean, I think when he throws the rock at the cop car, right, his buddy gets arrested and he throws a cop and everybody's like, "Are you okay, Fletch?" He's like, "I'm fine. They didn't want me. They wanted him." And being very he's just serious, right? He doesn't always put on the tough, sarcastic facade. There's times where he's serious. He's actually trying to figure out what's going on, and that works. And because he's being smart aleck in certain situations where there's a weird power dynamic, I don't know. The humor worked a lot better for me than it might in a movie that just literally is trying to have every single sequence be comedic.
I did have a question. So, Damon, you mentioned that the book, the request to have him kill him is separate from the drug thing. I was kind of confused by that in the movie. So was the guy from Black Sheep, was he with the cop bringing drugs into the city? Is that what?
Yeah, that's the impression you're supposed to get of the fact that when he goes to the airplane hangar and is talking with those 2 great guys, and they're like, "Yeah, you use as much fuel to go to South America and back," and so you're supposed to get that Stanwyck's going to South America. He's picking up the drugs, bringing them back on his private plane, which is easier to get them into the country than any other system at the time, and so then he the meeting that they had on the bridge where Fletch sees the Stanwyck get into the car with the chief. Yeah. And so they do the exchange there or some other place, and so the chief gets the drugs, then he passes the drugs on to the guy that's constantly getting arrested from the beach, and
but the guy from Cheers was the one he was the one selling it. Okay.
Yeah. So he'd be so Gummy would bring him to Fat Sam's and to George Wendt's place, and George Wendt would then cut it up and sell it, and he got free junk out of it, as he says. He just free junk.
That scene, I'm just gonna. That was one of those scenes that weirdly sat with me because George Wendt was really acting in that scene, and he's being serious. Here's a character who's really understands he's really screwed. Mm-hmm. He's like, "This is all I'm getting out of it, man," and you could feel the desperation. It was shocked. I was just impressed. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are really just doing acting in a serious movie, but it works. Somehow the balance it evens out.
Yeah, especially if George went like
it's one scene, but
Cheers had been going for probably I think about 3 years by this point, and so it's in a relatively small role for him to be in. But yeah, it's and you're expecting Norm, especially at that time you're seeing there's George Wendt, and you're like it's going to be he's doing the serious parts in this movie. He's they're not laughing off the fact that he's selling drugs. It's not, it is, while it is a comedy, yeah, you say they take the stuff seriously. They're not, making light of that this is a drug dealer and
real addicts, real problems.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, it's so that's, and once again, part of, I hesitate to say charm of the movie when you're talking about real beach addicts who that's all they do, live on the beach and do drugs that they get from this shitty hamburger stand.
Right.
But it's part of the charm of the movie that it takes its mystery seriously and then just lets Chevy be the comedy. Like it just it just lets the rest of the world be Chevy's straight man, and I think that really works.
And so Stanwyck, because he had another wife, right? There's this whole secret wife. So he just wanted to get out of the game. That's why he wanted to pretend to die.
I'm sure. Yeah, it is a little kind of a loose tie up to the movie, but yeah, no, I think it's just that I'm sure that he was just constantly, he came from, you see his family's farm is, it's this terribly rundown pig farm in Provo, Utah. And, I'm sure that he's always wanted money. And so he probably, he's probably cooked up this scheme with his first wife, with Sally Ann Kavanaugh, for years, that he's like, okay, I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to find a rich woman. I'm going to marry her and we'll bilk their family for millions. And then we'll get out of here. And part of the way that he found to make money was dealing drugs. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is kind of loosely threaded together, but it's threaded together, as strongly as you would expect a comedy mystery to probably wrap things up too.
Here's a general question, a little bit about Fletch, but were car chases better in the 80s?
Oh, the car chase in this movie is really good.
Yeah, they're so much better. Like anything pre even the first Fast and the Furious, where they used a lot of CGI to show you like the internal of the engines and everything. Like yeah, car chases were probably a lot better, because I think there was I think now we expect that the car chases, as thrilling as they are, we know that they're safe. Whereas there probably was, there were safety measures in place, but it's like comparing the safety measures in a NASCAR of the 80s to the safety measures in today's NASCARs. So that at some point these people were in danger, because the stunt guys are driving around in a convertible. So right there, you don't have a cage to protect them. So yeah, no, I think the car chases were a lot better.
Because I love this one. And it's like, it's not as good as Blues Brothers, but it made me think of Blues Brothers. Like,
yeah,
they take it seriously and know what's going on. It feels like they're really racing through the streets. I get the stakes. It's not cut too much, where you get disoriented. Mm-hmm. It was really, really, really exciting. I was like, man, this is like an actual genuinely good car. Beverly Hills Cop is a good comparison. The action, such as there was in this movie, is really exciting. They took it seriously.
Yeah. And kind of unexpected too, in the middle of this movie. Like, okay, now we've got a car chase. Okay, fun.
Yeah, I was up for it. I was up for it.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I was like, wow, I didn't expect this, but wow, this is really, really fun.
And the fun of having that hapless car thief kid.
I love the bit where it's like, hey, did you steal this car? Yeah, I stole it.
Sure did.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure that's even a crime anymore.
Right.
I think one of my favorite lines in the movie is when he pulls around the semi he's like, oh, there's Larry. Won't he be surprised? And just those little throwaway kind of lines are just great. And especially I think probably one of the most quoted lines out of the movie is can I borrow your towel? My car just hit a water buffalo.
Oh, sure. Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, the only time where and the movie didn't lose the thread, but the only time I wavered a tiny bit, and this is going to be the closest thing to a meaningful criticism I really have, other than Gina Davis is kind of like she has a pretty thankless role of just being Fletch's, eternal support, and has no other depth beyond that. But she's just there to literally scratch his back.
Yes,
and do all the things he needs her to do, even when he's kind of on the outs with his editor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's only where it got almost a little too silly. It lost here's how I'll say that. It lost the plausibility thread for me a little bit when he's giving the speech at the Shriners or whatever it is, and they have the weird hats, and the cops were just walking too slow. They were coming to the stage too slow as he's talking. I'm like, not a single one of those
reminded me a lot of
sprint.
It reminded me of the Naked Gun movies a lot. That's where it was kind of jumped into the Naked Gun parody kind of for me.
That's a good way to put it too. It's like, all right, we're just not quite. Ooh, okay. Those cops are walking way too slow for me. They are tiptoeing. There's 8 of them, and they're just letting him talk. I'm pretty sure there'd be dead sprinting to get him, but. That was it. I mean, that was the one point.
You had to have them tiptoe for the effect of the whole scene.
For him to give the awkward speech and then realize thank the police officer and everybody.
To let Chevy do his shtick and get everybody to hug the police. Hug a cop. Yeah.
Right. That was it. That was after the car. I mean, I didn't know how I wanted the car chase to end. I didn't know how it would end, which was part of what made it exciting. He's like, I don't know where this is going to go. He could get captured. He could not. I don't know. But it just leaves the poor kid in the stolen convertible.
Although I did like there is while it's a little unbelievable how slow the cops moved through the room in that scene, but the fact that some of the cops aren't thrown by the when he starts singing the national anthem. A few of them do take off their hats and they turn towards the flag, but then there's a couple of them that are like, no, screw this, and they're still moving through the crowd to try and get him. And I thought, okay, that's kind of recovering the slow action of the beginning of the scene. Is that no, these cops know that they still have a job to do. They still have to get this guy. They just get waylaid by everybody hugging them.
Well, should we segue over to just give our rating here?
Sure.
You want to, if you have out of 5 stars, you have a rating you want to give it?
Oh, I would definitely give this 4.5 stars. I mean, I don't think I could ever give it really full 5 stars for, some of the, the that implausibility of the cops moving slowly and kind of the weak connection of the threads towards the end. But like I said, this has been a staple. I watch this probably at least once a year, and I laugh just as much now than I did back in the day. And over the years, I think I've probably gotten more of the jokes, just just becoming an adult. But yeah, no, it's a solid 4.5 star movie out of 5.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, that's exactly the rating I would give it. It's just not perfect enough or quite deep enough. It doesn't resonate with me on a deeply personal level. But otherwise, I was shocked by how much I enjoyed it. I really came in expecting I might chuckle a little bit, and I was going to have to conjure up some nice things to say to not be too mean about it. That's what I thought was going to happen, and it didn't. I was like, this is genuinely fun to watch. I'm enjoying all of this. The writing is surprisingly good for an 80s comedy. And there's not a lot of, there really isn't much that's you can see stuff from the 80s and think, oh boy, that's what was funny in the 80s. Ooh. Yeah. There's very little of that. I don't think almost none of that was in there. I didn't have any of those bad vibes. It was just genuinely really, really funny. It was whatever Chevy Chase, whatever value he brings, this was the best version of that. Mm-hmm. Everybody around him does a really good job. I was impressed. Even the love interest, the wife who's married for the money and is born, she's thinking agent, and she makes choices and she has feelings, and I was like, wow, she has more depth than I expected. Gina Davis, I didn't love, but this is great. And they did that crazy balance. It's really tough to mash up two genres. It's really tough to do, especially when one of them's comedy, because comedy is the antithesis to tension in a lot of ways. You can use comedy to just resolve any tension and ambiguity in the plot, and that didn't happen, and they worked together really well. So I loved it. It was a really great time. I look forward to watching it again someday.
Yeah, I give it 4, so I'm a little behind on you guys. It's the Chevy Chase of it all. Like I had a hard
Chase of it all
from the beginning. I'm like,
it.
okay, I don't know if I love Chevy Chase. I think, like you said, it's probably the best thing he's done. Where after a while I started to really like some of the jokes he's making, and then thinking back on it, I appreciate it more. But like we mentioned Beverly Hills, I think Beverly Hills Cop just does this better.
Yep.
So obviously I would put that higher. But yeah, I mean 4 stars. I think there's some of those jokes that I've been thinking about a lot since I watched it. That I'll probably have him. I'll probably pop him out now when in my normal conversation, just like you.
Yeah, no, and one definitely, in my opinion, probably one of the best final lines of a movie ever. I put it all in the Underhill's American Express card. Want the number?
Oh, yeah.
And then just
Yeah.
credits.
Yeah.
It's right up there with beginning of a beautiful friendship and great final lines like that.
All right, so now it's time we got to bring it back to the all-time Iowa movie, Field of Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Damon is our guest. Do you want to do your connection from Fletch to Field of Dreams?
Sure. And probably I didn't really realize it when I picked it, but then while rewatching it in preparation for this, I really had forgotten like just the amount of classic character actors that pepper through this movie.
Oh, yeah.
You've got like his boss is Richard Libertini, who was he's been in all kinds of movies.
Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? Isn't he in that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And in comedies before that with like All of Me and The In-Laws. He's just a guy that was around forever and just did everything. You got George Weiner, who was his ex-wife's lawyer. He was a big staple in the Mel Brooks group for a long time.
Oh yeah, Spaceballs is what I recognize.
Spaceballs and yes. You've got M.M. at
He's
Walsh.
an asshole, sir. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that just hit me. Sorry, there we go.
Yeah, M.M. at Walsh as the doctor, and like I said, Gina Davis is there, George Wendt. You've got just tons of people that you can connect in this, so I just last night I listened to your guys' episode on The Player, and it's kind of the same way. It's like you just has so many actors in this thing that just you've got so many things to connect. But for me, I am a huge Mystery Science Theater fan, and so I of course had to go with Joe Don Baker as my connection person out of this movie. So we've got Joe Don Baker is in this. He is also then in The Natural. The great baseball film with Robert Redford. He's in that, and Kim Basinger is also in The Natural. And Kim Basinger co-stars in my all-time favorite movie, that replaced Beverly Hills Cop, L.A. Confidential.
Oh wow, okay.
Which to me is a nearly perfect movie. That was another one that I was like I can talk for days about L.A. Confidential. Sure. So that was another one of the movies that I was kind of like, should I pick that one for this? So yeah, so she's in L.A. Confidential, which also stars Russell Crowe, and Russell Crowe co-stars in one of my least favorite movies, Man of Steel, with Kevin Costner. And there's your connection.
Man, I forgot Kevin Costner's in Man of Steel. I just totally forgot.
My story on that is that I saw that when I was the friend that I worked with at 13. She now lives in Kansas City, and I went down to visit her and her husband, and we went to go see that. So we're in Kansas City, and here's this. He's playing Pa Kent, and he's grew up in he's a Kansas farmer. if you're going to make a movie about the Midwest, have a couple people on the crew that are from the Midwest that can go, guys, no. And the scene when he dies, if you haven't seen the movie, don't see the movie.
I've seen it.
And but the scene where he dies is an outdoor tornado, and he yells at all the people who've gotten out of their cars, they're stuck on the freeway, to get under the bridge. The last place, like the most unintentional laughter I have heard ever in a movie. The whole theater broke out laughing because we're like, what did he just say? And so yeah.
Well, he dies for it, so he gets.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Doesn't he go back in to save the dog in the house?
He goes to try and get a dog.
Yes.
So first of all, yeah, I mean,
he says, "Don't use your power, son. I'm going to die to save the dog."
Yeah, I'm not nothing against nothing. I don't want people to think I'm saying anything against dogs, but I think that's the best payback is, first of all, you told people to go under a bridge where they're inevitably going to die if the tornado gets anywhere close to that bridge. They're just going to get sucked right out. And second of all, you went back for a dog. Paul Kent in the original Superman the movie, having a heart, that's a moving scene. This is a scene,
and it makes more sense where he can't save him. He literally can't.
Yeah, he literally cannot save him.
You ate too many cheeseburgers, Dad. I'm sorry, I can't save you.
Yeah, right. Whereas this was just no, I got it. Yeah, you deserved it. I'm sorry, Kevin Costner, you deserve to die.
I just got it's. That movie's bad. It's not worse than like Batman versus Superman, though. That movie's worse.
Yeah, no. That whole though. Yeah.
What a sad debate this will turn into.
Yeah, that's true. We don't need to do that.
We don't need to do that. I'll just stop at that point because I can go. I have gotten in so many arguments with one of my good friends at work on the whole Man of Steel and the Zack Snyder-ishness of the DCEU.
Yeah, it's arguing about garbage, really.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Which garbage stinks less?
No. That smells. That smells really bad. No, but this one over here, it kind of smells like a rotting body.
Yeah, not a worthwhile endeavor. You're right.
No.
So I'll hop in with my connection. I forgot about the Russell Crowe Man of Steel connection. It would have helped me. I was trying to take a certain route and I couldn't get there, and I hit a dead end. And knowing this, I'm going to keep that in mind for future. So I had to do some of my fallbacks. I wanted to do M. Emmett Walsh because you're absolutely right, littered with total supporting characters.
Yeah.
I have another one that I saved in case Eric found it. I don't know if he did, but there's another connection that can get to one of Eric's favorite movies. I'll highlight it if Eric doesn't bring it up. But I went M. Emmett Walsh to Blade Runner. Nice. One of my favorite films, Blade Runner. It's great.
Yes. So good.
Who is he in Blade Runner?
I can't remember which side character he is.
He's the boss. He's the one who gives us the assignment at the beginning.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he runs the Blade Runners. That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean he's in there. He's in a bunch of other stuff, but I went with that. I tried to go the route of the Jerk. He's also in the Jerk, but that got a lot tougher. Bernadette Peters didn't help me out, and I was trying to avoid Steve Martin. But so anyway, Emmett Wall Blade Runner with Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford's in Patriot Games. James Earl Jones in that movie, and I'm bringing it back. It's I guess my favorite go-to in this is Sneakers. James Earl Jones is in Sneakers, and I've already at this point Timothy Busfield I think is the guy from Field of Dreams who's in Sneakers. So doing it that way.
Yeah,
love the Sneakers.
Sneakers is a great one. That's another one that people just don't really remember very much.
It's one we have to do at some point because Eric and I both have fond memories of it, and it just seems to be completely lost in time. But it's one I saw as a kid.
It's on one of the streamers now. I think it's on like HBO Max or something.
Yeah, no, that's a great. I think that's the first time I remember seeing David Strathairn in something, and I literally thought he was actually blind. Like I think he did such a good job in that movie. I was like, oh, is this actually a blind character? And then you saw him in something else. I'm like, oh no, he's not blind. Okay. I was like, hey, it's the blind guy from Sneakers, but no, he's not blind. All right.
Yeah, so I don't know if I did the connection you were hoping for, Ben. So I picked my girl Dana Wheeler Nicholson. She plays Fletch's love interest in this movie. She's in one of my all-time favorite movies, Tombstone.
Yes, this is exactly what it is. I saw this connection. I'm like, I'm going to leave Tombstone alone. I'm not going to touch it.
They do her dirty in Tombstone, though. She's just like on opium the whole time. It's not great. But I love that movie.
I'm so glad. Yeah. That's exactly what it has. Like, nope, leave
one of my favorites.
Alone.
I got a poster of it right here. Sam Elliott's in Tombstone. Great mustache, Sam Elliott. He's in A Star Is Born, the newer one. He's great in that. The scene where he's driving away crying is all-time stuff. Alec Baldwin's actually in A Star Is Born. I think he's like the SNL host when Lady Gaga's goes to SNL.
Okay.
And he's in The Hunt for Red October, and James Earl Jones is in that, and he's in Field of Dreams. So
yeah,
that's how I did that.
Yeah, James Earl Jones is the easy one to get a connection into, because man, that man's been in everything too.
Yeah, oddly we haven't used Lion King yet, have we?
Not really, because I think of the other people in Lion King, I just forget about them. I mean, there's like Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick and
Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, there's Jeremy Irons, but then that's it. I mean, Jonathan Taylor Thomas is the kid Simba.
That's true. You're right. There's not a lot of celebrities in that.
That I would use, that I would think to use. But is James Earl Jones in the Disney like live action remake? Does he get a bit part in there somewhere?
I think he did the voice again.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I think so. I don't want to remember live action.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, I saw it with my wife, and it was like, why did we do this? This was really
it's the same movie. It's the exact same movie.
Yeah, mistake. I don't know why we did this. Waste of time.
That's one of those depressing money grab things. You're like, they're really just screwing with us now, right? They're putting this out there, knowing that'll make money.
Like, how can you call it a live action movie when everything was computer generated? That was one of the big questions about that movie was like, you're technically, but technically not. So. All
right, well, ready to do some trivia?
Let's do it.
So next week we have another special guest joining us. He picked a movie for next week, and we'll do some trivia questions. Damon, feel free to jump in. It'll be basically 5 questions for this movie. And we usually kind of do, if you get a guess, you're out. But whatever, just if you got guesses, just throw it out there.
These are pretty loose rules. There's no consequences for violating them. We don't enforce them at all.
All right, so clue number 1. This movie was released in 1987.
Okay.
So that narrows it down.
Not giving you a ton of information there. Clue number 2. It's directed by an Oscar-winning director, and it was this person's directorial debut. The first movie by this director.
Okay.
Clue number 3. Tangerine Dream did the soundtrack for this movie.
Okay. It's going to piss me off when I find out what it is. Go ahead.
All right. Clue number 4. So 2 more clues. The movie features Bill Paxton and Lance Hendrickson.
I know. Near Dark.
Near Dark is correct. That is correct.
Not Catherine Bigelow's directorial debut, though.
Oh, really?
He did a movie called The Loveless before that with Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a biker movie.
All right.
But close to it.
Okay. So the last clue is just follows a young man in a small Oklahoma town who's become involved with a family of nomadic American vampires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's another one of my all-time favorites.
So this movie had been lost, like it was inaccessible for a very long time. You couldn't stream it anywhere. You couldn't rent it.
Yeah.
It has just recently gone up on Shudder, I think. So they did some deal so you can get it now on Shudder.
Nice. Yeah. No, I've got a physical copy. Yeah. It's right. It's probably right there. On that shelf.
Sure.
Yeah, there it is, right there.
Okay. I'm going to trust you. I cannot verify that he actually has it, folks, but I'm going to assume he's not lying.
Here, I'll pull it out of the shelf. There you go.
There it is. Oh, it's a nice, reflective cover.
Yeah. It's just just DVD, though, so I don't think this has ever been really put on Blu-ray yet.
Okay.
Because you're right. I think it's one of those that's got a lot of rights problems.
Sure. Probably, a lot of it's usually music, right, where they can't get the music rights.
It seems to be with Tangerine Dream because, that's one of the reasons Michael Mann's The Keep is difficult to find. It's one of the reasons. Another one of the rights reasons. I think there's several on both of these movies that. But yeah, part of it is it just seems like Tangerine Dream doing the music for your movie was, while it's cool music, probably a bad plan if you want to release it on any platform.
Yeah.
I know people have always said if you're like a young filmmaker, don't try to put some Beatles song in your movie. You're going to cost you $1 bazillion. You're never going to be able to make it that way. Just scratch that idea. All right, I'm excited. I've never seen Near Dark, so this will be a first time viewing for me.
Nice.
Me too. I hadn't seen either.
I look forward to listening to that episode just to hear what you guys think.
So any closing thoughts on Fletch? Any kind of last words?
Final words for you.
Just find it and watch it, damn it. But don't let this movie go into obscurity.
Preach.
Well, hopefully with the reboot, there'll be a resurgence of this movie.
I'm hoping.
You mentioned the sequel. Should we check that out? I haven't seen Fletch Lives is what it's called, right?
It's okay. I mean, if you're not big not big Chevy Chase fans, I'm not really sure I can recommend it because it's all about he inherits. And when you're talking about like, oh, this was what was funny back in the day, he inherits an antebellum mansion from a relative and moves to the South, quits his job at the paper and moves to the South, and even has this whole sequence combined with animation where he's imagines himself as the sharecropper with the Colonel Sanders outfit and the hat, singing Zippity Doo-Dah. So yeah, that one's a little bit.
I'm pre-cringing. Yep.
Yeah, a little bit cringy. So yeah, it's like I said, it's okay. It's not. I don't think I've even seen it since it was in theaters back in. I think that would have been like 89 or 90, maybe 88, somewhere in there. But yeah, no. Like I said,
to say not as good.
Yeah, not as good. Definitely not as good. And like I said, they couldn't do because in the books, he just takes the money and runs. And in the first book, he just because Stanwyck gets shot from outside the windows, and as he's dying, he tells Stanwyck like it's probably because it was probably the police chief, and he probably thought you were me, and so he just mails off the letter to his editor with the story and takes the suitcases of cash and flies. I think goes down to Rio the first time. So I'm really hoping that they do a good job with Confess Fletch, and it does create another research, and people are like, oh, this was another movie before this. So yeah, so just find it and watch it, damn it.
Will do. All right. Yeah. And anything else you want to plug? Take the floor. Anything you want to promote?
Just like I said, you can read my reviews most weeks. But yeah, find my reviews at kcci.com. You can just search my name. I also have like I said, I got a Facebook page for my reviews. It's just Damon Fudge, film critic and writer is the title of the page. So if you want to go like there, I post the links to my reviews. I post links there as well. So. For the social media, I just except for my personal Facebook page, mostly I just promote myself and my writing. I also have a website, just damonfudge.com, real difficult. And on there I put up, I write stories in my spare time. And so a bunch of my short stories are up there, plus broken up into chunks. I actually, like everybody talked about, I'm going to, during this COVID lockdown, I'm going to write a novel. Well, I actually did. So, and then there's a book there too. It's a thriller about a man who finds out that his best friends who died a year earlier in a fire may still be alive. It's called Flames. So yeah, you can check that out and any of my other stories. And I'm always interested in any kind of creative criticism, whether you like something or not. Let me know.
Well, huge thanks for joining. We really appreciate it.
Well, huge thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
Well, that's it. That's all we got for this week. Appreciate it again for joining. Check all your stuff out and take it easy.
Thanks, guys.